It looked like somebody was bent over and had their head in the window of the deer blind, and it either heard me or smelt me, and he pulled his head out of the tent and stood straight up, and that shocked me. They don't make people that big.
The way it moved, almost as if it was gliding across the beach. I've never seen anything move like that in my life. They were screaming at each other in gibberish. It sounded like a language, and they were chuntering away back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. I know what a bear looks like, and there is no way on this planet that what I saw were bears.
What are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
See ya!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
Hi, this is Emily from New York, and you're listening to the one and only Sasquatch Chronicles.
Welcome to the show. Tonight we'll be speaking with Marty, and Marty comes to us from New Hampshire. He was originally on the show, episode 1112, about a year ago, and he had this piece of property that him and his wife had purchased, and they were going to build a home and eventually move into this place full time. And in the beginning, they actually had 2 sightings and a lot of weird things happening around the property, including these lights showing up. Fast forward a year later, Marty and his wife have moved into the property full time. I put together a video of Marty's evidence, these emails he's been sending me for months. I kind of put it all together. It's about 6 minutes, but definitely check out the evidence that he has brought forth, including this creepy picture of this creature coming up to the window, or appears to be looking into a window. And I'll let Marty go into everything that's happened over this last year. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome back to the show Marty. Marty, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Wes. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming back. And again, for the audience, definitely check out the 6-minute video I put together below this episode, so you can kind of go through the evidence we're going to talk about tonight. And for the listeners who haven't heard episode 12, Marty, would you kind of give us a refresher of kind of a summary of this property out there in New Hampshire?
Yes. Back in 2021, my wife and I, we purchased a little over 5 acres in the mountains of southeast, or actually it's more like central New Hampshire. Basically, it was just a one-room camp, 12 by 16. Gentleman built, put a little wood stove in it, was kind of living in it, and had a brook, parking area, footbridge. From the parking area to the actual house itself, the camp, was about 150 feet. So it's set off the road, and actually the road coming in is a dirt road. So it's not really a major residential, drive-through. We have approximately total 5 neighbors on my road itself. All the properties themselves are, pretty good sized properties, 48 acres here. Up on the top, one of my neighbors owns over 100 acres, a lot of woods. And I'm actually kind of in a little hollow area between 2 little mountains. So there's a back beaver pond that there's a brook that flows through the middle of it. There's a back ridge that's approximately 30 feet in height, which is of a game trail on it. There's a lower game trail, which goes over a brook that connects in the front where my footbridge comes over where the parking area is. And it's totally off grid. My wife and I, we've been working on it. We did a couple upgrades. We put solar in, and just about almost a month ago, we put in Starlink. So at least we have some ways of not only getting better reception, but getting some internet and using some Wi-Fi for the cameras.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you guys have internet, because I know you're out in the middle of nowhere. And the last time you and I spoke, it was about a year ago. I think it was December of last year when you and I spoke. And you've sent me a kind of a list of evidence that you've collected. And some of the evidence is these lights showing up. And you originally sent me this ball of light out in the woods. And I'll include the original video below.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that. The lights are really starting to come around again since I've been able to link into my cameras, and I've actually for the last, I would say, about 2 months to 3 months been living here full time myself. So,
well, if you would take me back about a year ago, kind of walk me through all of the things that have happened.
So the last time you and I spoke, I did reach out to Cliff Backerman through an email and asked him for actually two things. One, for his suggestion for a recorder to use, kind of something that's a weather, but not too expensive. Just to have something here to try to start doing some recordings to see if I can catch anything. Vocalizations, etc. And also, what kind of method of just detailing and really cataloging, what my findings are, so I keep everything straight as time goes on, forward. And, he was very nice, responded back. He gave me a suggestion on the recorder, which I did go out and buy. And he also suggested that I reach out to any type of local organization, Bigfoot organization in my area to maybe help, with the documentation and stuff. So I did so. Unfortunately, I ran into where, there was a lot of people being cynical, being the internet and all. And I had a gentleman reach out to me privately and talk to me. And he actually runs a live show. It's actually a podcast that's become very, very popular. And he just walked me through everything, and he turned out to be an awesome source, and he's a good, really great friend of mine now. Anyways, I started doing the just recordings and stuff like that to see if I can catch anything. But it was funny, after you and I had spoken, I was sitting outside on my back porch, and it's probably about mid-December, and it was nighttime, and I'm just listening. I'm sitting in the dark, and I could hear something walking on the upper ridge. It sounded, decent size, bipedal. And I did hear a couple twigs snap, and I'm like, okay. And, didn't pay too much about it, mind about it, went back inside, went to bed. Had a couple things I had to do in the morning, but in the afternoon, I went out there and I walked up on the ridge, and sure enough, I found a trackway, which is one of the pictures I sent you. I think it was a while ago. I sent you that picture where it's the footprints in the snow that were coming up the hillside. So I started, really documenting everything on that sense. But at that point, like I said, I wasn't, full time yet, and I was only coming up on the weekends, using the recorder, which had like a, a setup on it, where, it detects sound, it would kick on. But unfortunately, the sound was, really loud enough, and there was actually sound behind it. It only recorded for a short period of time, then shut off again. And I found that out a little too late on some of the stuff, but I started just using, straight recorder then. But what ended up happening was, come springtime, that was the time that my wife and I had spoke about. We did the addition, off the back, added the solar. We had a little sleeping area, a little bathroom area that we were going to add a living space of 16 by 23. So the spring hit, everything thawed out, and I started working again. So I started spending a little bit more time here, and this was, getting into the, the early, months of, like right around early May and stuff. And I kept watching. Remember how I told you, and I had the pictures about the fingerprints all over my trailer. So what I kept doing is just watching for it. The one side that was heavily, had all the fingerprints over the, winter months, with the snow melt, rain, and everything else, they were gone. So I just kept watching, almost every time it would pull up, after, being away for a little bit, I would go check the trailer out to see if there's any, fingerprints and stuff. But what I did is right in the beginning of the season, I placed it was like a piece of marble rock that I found on the road, like a little white rock that I set on top of the fender that had like a little side light indicator. I set it right on top of that in the center of it, on the side that faces the wood line where the brook comes through the trees and then hits the, our footbridge. Every time I go over there, I take a look at it, and then I noticed I started seeing, every so often, some fingerprints, some like smudges. Not like it was before. I mean, that was a lot, that I had earlier, and it was all on the other side now. It wasn't on the parking area side. It was on the wood side now. And one day I showed up, walked over there, and the rock had been moved about an inch forward and turned a quarter turn. And I'm looking at that, and you can see where it sat so long. It made it look basically like a outline on top of the plastic in, the directional. And I'm looking at that. I'm like, okay, so, something moved it. So I moved it back, and I put a turkey feather underneath it. And so I think not even 2 days later, I came back. The turkey feather was to the back of the trailer, and the rock was moved again, but it was moved towards the outside, away from where it was moved before. So twice that happened. I was starting to see the fingerprints, and I actually didn't see a lot of fingerprints this year from it. And I think it's because I set a recorder up underneath, on top of the tire, underneath, where the fender is. And I just had that's at the point where I was still, just having it where, sound, come on and then shut down, after, no more sound. Well, I started listening to the recordings, and one thing I noticed, and I don't know if I sent you, some of those recordings, but you can hear, like a car go by, of course it'll turn on. And as it's, slowly, going in the distance, you can hear a tree knock. This happened in a span. I only did it for like a week worth of recording, but I think altogether I got 7 or 8 different wood knocks after a vehicle would pass. It was like, I don't know, they were indicating or just, letting, hey, somebody's coming. But it was crazy. I've never, physically heard wood knocks, on a regular basis, not like that. That was happening. And like I said, that was the start of everything in that sense. And then I started, basically almost late May. We were into a drought situation. So right before that, we did have a little bit, we had the snow melt and stuff, and we could still burn. So there was a bunch of brush and stuff from, the previous, trees and stuff being knocked down, for snow and that kind of thing. And it was just cleaning up. And during the time it was burning, I swore I heard, like a wood knock off in the distance, but, to me, it could have been anything, but it might have been a knock. So that evening, I ended up setting a recorder out. Again, it was still set, for, coming on when, it hears noise. Well, that evening, something kind of strange happened that I ended up waking up. I just wasn't, really falling asleep or whatever. I was just looking at my phone. I must have been up for about, I don't know, half hour just looking at my phone, and I shut it down. And I'm laying there, and about 10 minutes after doing so, I heard a loud bang. So it actually, shocked me a little bit. I kind of stood up a little bit, and I kind of moved and started, looking around. And the motion I have, I don't know if you remember me telling you that I put a whole bunch of different, spotlights with motions all over the place. And one of my spots, or actually 2 of them, went off. And as I got up, I couldn't see anything, but, something definitely set 2 of them off.
What was the loud bang? Did it hit the house?
I had no idea. It sounded like it was out in the porch area, which, like I said, it's not a very big place. The additional portion of the house I built onto, the bathroom size is like 5 by 8, and the sleeping area is 8 by 11. So, the addition part that I put on, the previous winter, wasn't big, but I mean, it's still, it was loud. So what I did was I went back and listened to the recordings, because at that point, it just, whatever sound it picked up, it record, and it had about 19 minutes worth of recordings. And in those recordings, one of the things that I heard was this craziest, I wish I was able to send you the sound file on it, but it sounded like, from the movie Jurassic Park, how the raptors were communicating with each other. It sounded like raptors. And it did it like 3 or 4 times, that whatever this vocalization was. I got recordings of rocks hitting, my back metal roof on my porch. It was part of that recording. And something else got banged, during those recordings. So I kept, putting it out, using the sensor on it. And I'm like, well, I'm not getting much, anymore. And I'm like, I wonder if anything's, going on. But then I switched to where I was just recording the whole night. So I would have like 9 hours recordings that I would just go through, listen through my earbuds. And that's when I started, getting all kinds of different things that, a lot of rock throws, tree break, like twigs breaking, walking around. And it had to be fairly close to pick up that kind of sound. Because the recorder himself wasn't the best recorders in the world. But, they were definitely, picking that up. And then, things just started, going. I just started staying longer. And like I said, I started working, putting the peers and stuff on, for the edition. And I just had, we had what I can only describe as the vocalization. It sounds like a female vocalizing. It's very feminine sounding. It's very high pitch. And I don't know, is that one that, I don't know if I sent you that recording, but it was wild. I listened to it and I'm like, and then right after, she made the final like vocalization on it, at the tail end of it, you can hear what it sounded like a who, like a owl, but it's not an owl. It's definitely, remember how I always, I was telling you that it sounded like owls, but it was not owls. You just tell from the volume and just how loud it was. I believe it's like the young one that's with it, because I believe that I have at least 3, if not 4, that are in the area, and I believe it's a family unit from what I'm gathering from footprints and stuff like that, and just recordings and just hearing it live. My wife and I, heard that female vocalization in the middle of October. We're sitting out in this greenhouse, just enjoying the night air. And when I used to call it Junior's, well, I do still call it Junior's area, that we heard that the quick vocalization, what I believe is the female, and way off in the distance that hoot sound real quick. My wife's looking at me, and then she decided to, we had a Bluetooth speaker we were playing music on, and she started playing a barred owl call. But we didn't get any response from it. She just thought, to see if we could.
Yeah, I do believe that you sent me that one. I included it in the video file of all of the evidence that I could include. And you're right. In one of those recordings, you hear something, and I'm not quite sure what it is. And then after that, you hear this weird owl sound that doesn't sound like an owl. Has there been any more sightings on the property?
Well, it was one evening I was out. This is before I actually had the internet hooked up, and the only way I can get a clear enough signal to at least 2 bars was to sit in the parking area of my vehicle. And I was watching my buddies. He was doing. He investigates in the Bridgewater Triangle, and I've actually gone down with him a couple of times, and had the opportunity to investigate with him down there. So anyways, he does live streaming when he does his investigations. And so I'm sitting, it was a Friday, evening, And I'm sitting, in the parking area watching, the live event he had. Of course, he went into, the nighttime. So it was about a little after 8 o'clock, and it was dark. And so I walked. I had my headlamp, but I didn't turn it on because I got all those spots as you walk along, the path, to the house. They turn on, and I really didn't need to turn it on. So went inside real quick, and so I stepped out. This was, it was almost early to middle September when this happened. And so I stepped out onto the porch, and I still had the lights out. I didn't have my headlamp on, but it's still on my head. And I'm just listening to see if I can hear anything, and that's, any type of, vocalizations, any type of, just animal noises in general. And from my left, as I'm, staring, and basically that was the area I call Junior's area, I can hear something walking. I mean, good size, definitely sounded bipedal, walking, towards me, and stop. And I'm like, okay. So I turn my headlamp on, and I turn, and there about 3 feet off the ground was two set of eyes. And, they were 10 inches apart. They were about the size of golf balls, the eyeballs on it. And there they were looking at me. And I'm like, I shied away because I just, from other, people that, witnesses and stuff that, been on your podcast, said you really don't want to shine the lights directly into their eyes. So I didn't. I was nervous as hell. I mean, they were 40 feet away from me. And I just kind of kept my headlamp down, but I could still see the eye shine. And I'm just talking in a nice low voice and stuff, nice and calm, and and just watching it. And it was just like, it was weird. The heads and the eyes were just turning like really slow and like methodical. And at one point, one of them, the one to the left, when I'm looking at it, turns and looks at the other one. As it's turning, the eye blinked to a red color, then went back to basically like a yellow or clear, like a regular light color, and looked back at me. And so I'm sitting there, and I had my phone. I switched it over to the camera. I thought I had it on video, and it wasn't. So here, they talk about, oh, how can you get any picture? I tell you what, when they're that close and stuff, you get a little shaky, So, I'm watching them and stuff like that. Then the one on the left starts to stand up. And at that, like I said, they were about 2.5, 3 feet off the ground. And then these eyes that are lifting kept going. And I'm like, oh my God. And that's when I backed into into my house and shut the door. And I'm like, okay, I gotta get my nerve back up. I turned on all the lights, and the outside spy went back out there, but you can hear him, walking off. So in the morning, I went out there, and I tried to judge as best I could. I had these composting barrels. They're sitting on a little bipod thing where you could spin them. And the top of it's approximately 4 feet off the, height wise. And when this, when it stood up, from, the angle and stuff I was at, it was about 3 feet taller than that. So it was about 7 feet. But then I noticed in the area where they were at, and I actually took pictures of it. There's an area where you could see like something had laid down, and it was like a little back hill, of it. And it must have been standing about a foot below that grade. So it was about 7 to 8 feet tall when it stood up.
Wow. So there's two of them, and you said they're about 40 feet from the house?
40 feet. Yeah. And like I said, the eyes were huge. Like they were 10 inches apart. They weren't glowing. The only way I could see is when I had the light down a certain way, and they shined pretty bright. People had talked about how the eyes glow and stuff. In this case, they did it. It was eye shine. And it was just like, it caught me off guard. I mean, I know that they're in the area, but I never knew they would walk up on me like that.
What color were the eyes before they blinked red?
White. They were white, like the soft glow white. And it was weird because it just did it for a second where it kind of blinked, to the red as it turned its head and looked at the other one. And then it went back, to the white. It was just a split second. And like I said, that was crazy seeing that. It's almost like someone was, like the bulb was like flickering. So.
Yeah, it's kind of strange for eye shine to go from red to white, unless an outside source is changing it, like the light you're hitting it with. But if your light's consistent, that's really weird. And for the audience that hasn't heard episode 1112, both of the sightings actually happened on this property.
Oh yeah. The first one was broad daylight at about 80 feet. It was 1:30 Sunday afternoon, a beautiful sunny day. My wife and I just got to the property. I was unloading stuff still. She was on the phone with our daughter, and it started walking off. And we, at first I thought it was a moose because how big it was. And there was a section where I was looking through. Like I said, it was like a 3x3 area in the hemlock grove, and it was nothing but, back of it, whatever this thing, what. But we found out that it was definitely one of these. My wife saw the arm, move the branch, and it kind of freaked her out a little bit. And the second sighting, I was just me. And I was putting away stuff in our portable garage, and I was probably about 35 feet, maybe, from where I called it Junior because of the height and stuff at the time. But it was nighttime. I had my headlamp on. I happened to look up, and I see the silhouette of it running across, and my headlamp just basically absorbed, into it was black. Jet black, and it looked like it was on roller skates. It just glided right across. It was fast, and it went right, in front of our two cars and right past the green trailer towards the brook side. And height wise, it had to lean forward to it, but I estimated that to be about 6.5 feet at the time because it was just about a foot and a half, less height than the back of my trailer, which is 8 feet.
Yeah, that's right. I do remember that. And, these sightings, they happened before you really started building on this home. How far from the home were those two previous sightings?
We also had dropped a lot of trees when that first daytime sighting, and it was on the other side of the trees. I really believe it made the noise and walked off as a distraction. I think there was a smaller one that was there within those, around the backside of those bushes. It's my opinion. But that was, like I said, that was at 80 feet. The other one was like at 30, 35 feet, which was across the brook for me from my portable garage. But I'm having them come right up to they're coming up to my porch. They're on my porch. They went across the decking and stuff that I had put up, for the framing for my addition. I have a footprint where literally it's right behind my house. That I don't know if you got the recording where they're tapping on my window. That was the same night that the following morning I went out there and I found the footprint.
Yeah, I did get that recording. And again, it's below this episode in that video. Why do you think that they're coming so close to the house now?
I think it's just they're comfortable. I think the fact that they've gotten used to us being here. I think they're really curious to what's going on because one of the pictures that I sent you was of the handprint, and the other it didn't dawn on me until later because I'm like looking at it, I thought it was a footprint and it was kind of rounded and it was kind of like really weird shape and like oval and everything. What it was is it was his knee. So you can see where put the hand down, the knee, and it was looking underneath where I built the deck. And I just got done finishing putting in the 2-inch rigid foam insulation between the floor joists. And I think it was looking underneath to see what's going on, why, like it's all covered. And I think it really was interested in what's going on. And I swear that they have a little guy, like almost like I know it's around. Well, I got pictures of it outside my kitchen. I think it was watching my TV. And you can see the eyes, and it's kind of moving and looking around, and it kept looking over to the left, and that's the side on the where the porch side is. And the one thing I did notice is that my one spot with the sensor on it, it doesn't work all the time, and I'm pretty sure they know that because they wouldn't come on when they were coming up around. And I noticed that like in the early mornings that thing would be dead as a doorknob, where all the other ones still worked fine. So I don't know if it's just, the location is not getting enough sun and just goes to a certain degree. I don't know. But they seem to know how everything works here. And of course, when I've been here up to this point, I haven't really ran the Wi-Fi and the cameras because I haven't been able to. And since I hooked Starlink, I can. But up to this point, I haven't had to use them. I didn't turn them on when I'm here because it just wastes batteries. So they definitely know that they were off and everything. But between, like I said, I can hear, with those recordings, you can hear them playing. And I found the rock. It sounded like something was playing on my porch with a rock and next to the decking that I did up for the addition. And I found it. It was like playing with it, like kind of tossed it. There was another time, almost an hour worth, where it sounds like, something's just sitting there and just like tossing underhand, like rocks, onto a rock pile. It was the weirdest thing. I got all these different recordings, just, like I said, hours of different recordings. The female vocalization, I have it recorded on 4 different occasions. Plus, personally heard it with my wife one night. So the activity is just, well, I did tell you, though, because of life and stuff like that, we weren't there as much, and I was going to spend more time. And just doing so, it definitely is apparent to me that, they're definitely here, and I think they're here to stay for sure.
Yeah, you did send me that picture of that little one. It appeared, all you really see is eyes and a little bit of the face. And for people who are looking for that in the video, it's more towards the end that I put that in there. But you can see its eyes moving. It's watching something, and strange, it's watching TV. I've definitely heard that one before. Where do you think that they go when they're not coming up to the home? Like where do you think that they're staying on the property?
Well, that's the thing. I think the area that I call Junior's area, they do kind of hang out. At least what I consider the younger ones, because I think the little guy, and I think Junior, his print is around a 12 now, a 12-inch print. The little guy, which I just found this year next to a patch of raspberry bushes next to the brook in the sand, I'm looking at it, and it looked like it was like 6 inches. It was kind of hard, to really get any type of detail on it to, really measure it. But I believe because it looked like it was hauling through the bushes. And I'm like, I know bear, we catch him on the camera and stuff. That's one thing I could say that I haven't seen that hasn't been around is bear. The bear population went to 0 for whatever reason. I mean, we still have the moose that comes through every so often and stuff like that. And we had a family of bobcats we don't even see anymore. So certain, animals and stuff are kind of gone and everything. And I think maybe it's because they moved into the neighborhood a little bit more permanently. I don't think they, necessarily stay right on the property. Because like I said, my property, has some area where they can basically go into and hide in. But once the leaves and stuff are off the trees, at the late, October, early November, usually it's very scarce. So a lot of the activity that we do see it's usually starts up right around middle May, end of May, from what I'm gathering now because of being here. And it really, for whatever reason, ramps up and becomes, there's a lot more vocalizations. The communications, like I said, they imitate the barred owl, and it's just think of a barred owl call on steroids. That's what it really sounds like. And it's deep and guttural, very guttural type, noises. And I usually hear it, especially after you'll hear the female vocalize, and then you'll hear, the owl. But I think one is the smaller one, and then when you hear the big group, I think it just calls them in, and it's the rest of the family unit. The one thing I haven't seen the print of, a big print like the male I had, I think it was a male. I'm just speculating because of the size of it. This was 4 years ago when we first started really paying attention to stuff. It was close to a 22-inch print, but I have not seen that. The second biggest I've seen is 16. But the one I see all the time is the 12, all the time. So I don't know if that's maybe, Junior or the female. I'm not quite sure.
Oftentimes I'll ask people, where do you think that they go when they're not around the home? And it's always amazes me that the answer is, I'm not sure. Even the Browns, who had activity like how you're having activity, and theirs went on for many, many years. It's still going on. I'll ask them, where do you think that they go? Where do you think that they stay on the property? And even the Browns, it's like, I'm not sure, I know you said that there might be over there where this area you call Junior's area, but these things are like chasing a ghost.
Right. And the reason why I'm saying that particular area majority of the time is because we do get this, and it's funny because it's almost like you can almost gauge it. It smells kind of like that dead mouse smell. And, we'll get that whiff, and usually it's coming from that area, the tree line that's, what I call Junior's area. And that's when I start, really, noticing things that are going on. And back, it was right around, I would say, middle of September, my wife and I were cleaning up. We had a surprise birthday party that was going to happen on the property the second week in October for my grandson. So I ended up going to the dump, and my wife was cleaning up, raking up, and she said that she stepped into the tree line over there, and she said something screamed at her. She says, I've never heard anything like it before. She said it sounded like it was down low. She says, I don't know what that was. And I'm like, okay. And I don't like to get her nerves about nothing. So I said, well, it could have been anything, so later on that evening, it was not quite dark yet. We were hanging out in the screen house, and I can hear every so often a rock being thrown from that area. You can hear it, you can hear something, that's, coming down straight, or it's going through the leaves, and you can hear it coming through the leaves, and it hits, and you can tell it's, got substance, it's a rock. And twice it happened. My wife, looks at me and says, sounds like something's falling off the trees. I said, yep. I just went with it. And so she went inside, and I was getting ready to go inside myself. As I'm walking, there was a third one, and it was all from that area. And there was like I said, that one night, I got all the recording, especially, the female vocalizing. I played for my wife, and she says, well, that sounds weird. She plays it off because she doesn't really, I don't think she wants to buy into it, because she does, then she has to admit, and she feels safe here, which I think anything was going to happen, it would have happened already, to be honest. So, but anyways, I was, I played that recording. So I believe it was the following evening. So it was in the evening, it was dark. We're in the screen house, and then we heard that the female vocalize, and that's, and she's looking at me, and it was from, just, ways in, Junior's area. And then there was literally right after that, the response was like it way down in the valley area was like an owl again, and it's always like that, where you hear that vocalization, you hear some type of owl call. And, she just kind of looked at me, and again, she just kind of shrugged it off. But then the following weekend, we're in the, screen house. We had, just have that, it's like a little rope light that's around the, the top of it, it gives, a little bit of light, but the rest of the lights in the house and stuff were out, and we're, it's dark, and, we're enjoying, relaxing. And it sounded like, I don't know how many, but you can hear walking, and it was, it sounded close, but I believe it was up on the upper ridge, the game trail on the one side, and over in Junior's area, you can hear walking pretty heavy footsteps over there. And my wife got real nervous. She had me go turn the lights on. So I did so, and I'm sitting there. I have an actual pair of night vision binoculars I bought a long time ago. I had it out there. I didn't use them at that point, but I'm sitting in the chair, and we had the lights on, the spots and everything, and I'm looking over at Junior's area, and I'm looking. I could see eye shine, just the one kind of like peeking around a tree. It was probably, I don't know, about 50, 60 feet in. And I called my wife to try to show her. And as she comes up, and I'm pointing, as soon as I start pointing, it ducks, it's gone. And so I come out and I start using, I definitely believe they could see IR, infrared, because with these binoculars, they throw it out to be able to see. So I turn it on and I start just, panning a little bit. As I start going towards the juniors area, I hear something run off. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, they don't like that. And I just had, certain situations where, like with the light, and well, right after, going back to where I saw the two, with the eye shine at 40 feet, next to the ground, and the other one stood up. Well, like the following weekend, I went out there, I tried to get my nerve up again, and I had the door kind of cracked open. So if I could go, I could go back into the house real quick, but there's a rain barrel that I stood next to, on the porch and looking out to, where I had seen them originally. And I had the headlamp off and I'm listening. I could hear something walking. And I'm like, okay, it sounds like they're coming up again. Well, I turn my head, click on the light down on the ground so I don't, like startle. As I start to turn my head, I even have it on because I was videotaping it. As I start to turn my head, you can hear it run off from behind my woodshed. I actually, I haven't sent that to you, but I have, one video of, out my kitchen window and this, out past my, woodshed, which is about, 15, 20 feet off my kitchen window. You can see eye shine, something like peeking through my woodshed. And I got the video of that too. And it just, like I said, they're coming in close and they're just observing. They're checking everything out. I actually have, I didn't send you that video, actually that picture. We had this like enamel pot, big pot, that we had used for beans or whatever. It was sitting out on our back porch. One of the recordings I had was something playing with the lid. And so I went out there and there's a whole bunch of fingerprints all over on the lid where it was playing with it. And that was not ours. It was very greasy prints too.
Yeah, I know because of the size of some of these files, it's hard to email. And I have a few ideas on how to get them to me. I would love to see that one. Did it remind you of the fingerprints that were on your trailer?
This was really greasy. There was only one print. I remember you asking me about that, how if they were greasy and stuff. The ones on the trailer weren't really greasy. They were more like they put their hands on it and they were just rubbing their fingers all over it and just dragging it along and playing with it and stuff. And it's funny because I think over time, either the younger one that was doing it is kind of grown up and stopped doing it. And then it's almost like on the backside, it was another one just kind of, maybe it was the same one, just kind of playing around a little bit, but the fascination kind of wore off, but I still got that giant handprint right on the front. That's never gone away. That's never come off. It's never washed off. That was the only one that actually I could say that might have had grease to it. So.
And I want to talk more about what's going on the property, but what's the deal with the lights on the property? That seems like that's ramped up.
Oh, the lights. And what about they talk about the Tic Tac UFO. I got a great picture of that. I was like, oh my word. And that's the second time I've seen that. The first time was, I was working on a job, that was right on Ospey Lake. And, one of my guys I work with that pointed out, I said, what the hell is that? And sure enough, it was one of these things. And we were, looking at it and he was taking pictures of it. And one morning I was out, cleaning the solar panels on my place from snow. And I happened to look up, up over the top of the pond and the mountain, and it was beautiful blue sky. And there was one right there going across the sky. So I was able to get a picture of that. There was another one where when I zoomed into it at first, I wasn't quite sure what it was. And then I took a picture of it and it was the weirdest, looks like a jellyfish looking thing. I don't even know if you got that one. I think I sent that to you. Actually, up to, I didn't have any lights this morning, but the last couple, I would say the last week and stuff, I've been, seeing them. And actually, when I started playing around with my cameras, I have the one camera that faces the backside of my place, plus the addition that I've framed up. It's not closed in yet. And you can see you have the ridge in the background and everything. When you actually just put it on, regular view live, it doesn't really throw out an IR. The only time it throws out the IR for any type of picture and stuff like that is when you actually go to take a video or take a picture of it. So I think it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, just laying in bed, click on it, and I'm looking, and up on the ridge next to a tree, I wish I could have videoed it, but unfortunately I couldn't. I'm like, what is that? At first I thought it was a light or orb, but I believe it was eye shine. The thing, looked out around the tree, looked down, then ducked behind again. And like I said, I watched it probably for a good 5-10 minutes. I did get a screenshot of it because that's all I could do because the power was so low on it. I had to get new batteries. I wasn't able to do a video on it, but it was crazy. And that was okay. That was definitely, I believe was, one of them up on the ridge. And then I started getting these lights, like on the front side. First it was, just the one, and it was kind of funky looking. Then 2 mornings ago, about 4 o'clock, I went on the camera, and it looked like it was a party of lights. It was the craziest thing. It almost looked like, like Christmas lights out in the woods. And then plowing last night after I got off the phone with you, I'm like, okay, I backed up and I looked over at Junior's area past the trailer. I'm like, it looks like a light. Then all of a sudden there was another one. Then it was another one. It was 3 of them together. I took a picture of that and I sent that to you. Well, actually, it was a video. I sent that to you. It's like, holy crap. And I mean, this is just like, it's just happening. And the other thing too is just seeing this stuff from the skies. It's just, it's weird. I don't know if it's because now I'm really taking notice, on that particular aspect of it. I don't know, but it's just something that's been just happening a lot more now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you with the lights and now these weird things in the sky, do you think it's all related? Yeah,
all honesty, I don't know. I mean, I did notice, like I said, when you and I had talked, last year, I was definitely seeing it, regular enough to, make notice, especially, that one that I got, the video that I sent you, before, you and I spoke last year. I don't know. I honestly don't know. You hear like a lot of your witnesses, talk about the lights, in where they're having sightings and stuff. And like I said, this is something that's not only, well, you think about it. I know I'm here. The activity's ramped up, like to no end. And at the same time, the lights are ramping up to no end. So it sounds like something that does definitely go hand in hand in some areas.
Can I ask you, what do you think? I know I asked you before, but what do you think the lights are? Because this is really ramped up. I mean, this is much more than what you were getting before. This is like lights on steroids.
Oh yeah, this is a totally different game now. So, I don't know. And, I have a couple of buddies that have theories and stuff. They say, well, it could be, something that's, spiritual. It could be something that, is a transformation of, interdimensional stuff going in and out. I honestly don't know. I just know that, like it's been crazy end of the summer, early, into the fall, type of stuff going on in my place. And then to have this, going on now. And it's kind of weird. I think, well, it was about this time, a little bit before that when I got that video, and maybe it was something that was happening more and more, but I wasn't here enough, to see it. And plus, it's a game changer having my cameras where I can, remotely look at them now. Before I just go in there and, see if anything set off the motion, because those things don't set the motion off. So it wasn't until I actually started looking through the cameras I was seeing all this stuff. And like I said, it's a matter of just, okay, I'm now paying attention. This is what's happening.
Do you have a thermal by chance?
No. I actually have looked into it. I just haven't gone through, the phases of actually finding something and, pulling the trigger and buying something. And it's probably something that I should look into, just to kind of get an idea that way. I mean, that night vision works pretty good. But I do think I can see that light because, like I said, that one time where, like I said, I was panning and it definitely sounded like it ran off because of that, whatever it was.
Yeah, I'd be real curious if you get one. For whatever reason, I've experienced it once, but I've heard it many times that those lights don't actually show up on thermal. It's just kind of weird. But I'd be real curious if you end up getting a thermal, if you can actually see the lights through it. What are some more notable things that have happened on the property, and what are you kind of hoping to accomplish?
Well, I just want to keep, from accomplishment standpoint, just keep logging, the experiences, just collecting data and just, keep it and using it for reference and stuff. And I guess there's no one out there that's going to really say, hey, yeah, you did prove the existence of, but it's just for my own peace of mind because this property, my wife and I plan on passing it down to our families and put it in the trust and everything. And my one grandson we threw the party for absolutely loves this property, and that'll be something, great for him to do. And it's funny because I talk about, the Bigfoot and stuff like that. He just kind of smiles. He just rolls with it and stuff like that. But, little does he know if he does end up kind of taking over the property and stuff, if they're still around, he's going to have a big surprise, to say the least. But I think it's just keeping documentation, it's something for my own collection, I guess. Just see, where this takes us. Since, it's a little over 4 years now since we own the property, and the transformation of the property itself has come a long way. At the same time, things have really, taken shape here with just the overall, what's been going on. So.
Yeah, I respect that. And you've collected a lot of evidence. If you guys are ever out there again and you're kind of call blasting things, try and call blast things that they haven't heard before. Instead of a barred owl, do like a baby crying or something like that. Stuff like that tends to draw them in.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think they have a problem being drawn in here for whatever reason. I think they just really are interested in, what my wife and I do. It's because it's usually just really her and I, here, if that's not just me. And I think they've just gotten, just that comfortable. And I honestly believe is that it is a family unit, and I believe they have no problems. I swear to God, they put the kid here, let him play while they go out and do stuff. I wouldn't put that by it. I swear, because like I said, some of these recordings, for over an hour, something is like playing around on my porch, and it's just like I can see it as being like a babysitter. I swear to God, it's a feeling I have. I mean, I have no idea, but it's just from what I've seen. Like I said, the little one, I call the little one, it's about 4 foot, and it was standing out there, and it saw me, and it didn't run off. It just kind of looked around, and I swear it was watching TV because of the positioning where it was at, and where my TV is. It's higher up I have it on a dresser, so where I can see it, and I think it was watching the TV. Honest to God.
Yeah, you hear some Native American legends about that, as far as them leaving their kids and going off and doing whatever they do. And you are collecting some really cool evidence. I mean, you've gotten a lot over this last year, and I really hope people go and watch that little kind of slideshow of your evidence I put together. Last time we spoke, for some reason it's sticking in my head that most of the activity was from May to November. This year, it kind of seems like it's just all the time.
No, well, that's the thing. I had that one incident where after you and I spoke, and it was like middle December. It would happen to be like a little bit of a snow just on that evening where, like I said, I heard something walking on the ridge, and the twig snaps and stuff, and I found that trackway. But in general, after that, I only found one other set of tracks. A good size one. I think that one was like a 16 or something, 16 by 8 wide. 2 tracks that were right actually where the 2 were, laying down. That I saw the eye shine. That's where it's weird because it's in the snow, There's two prints, and that's it. And I'm like, how is that even possible? But they definitely, between the stride, the measurements and stuff, they were prints. So, but that was the only other time that I found any evidence. But again, I wasn't here throughout the winter like I am now. And the times I did go out there, I didn't see anything. So, like, other tracks after that. But right around early May, things I started up again. They definitely, from May, and it just slowly builds. And for whatever reason, end of August, September, early October, it's like that's the hot time. That's where I saw the most activity.
Yeah, and as you and I talked about before we came on the air, how much snow you guys are getting, I would imagine it's almost impossible for them to hide their tracks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, plus I got the cameras too, rolling like 24/7 now. Before, I wasn't rolling them like I am now. And they definitely know what those are. And like I said, up to that point, they were coming up. Like I said, the track's literally right behind my window. I got the recording of them tapping on that window that night. And I wish I was able to cast it. I did go to get some casting material, but literally before I got back, the squirrels in the area decided, because it was like a soft area, and they decided to dig a bunch of holes all in that hillside, that mound. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me! And of course, one of them dug right into the print. So it's like awesome. But I got like I said, I got a great picture of it, with the ruler next to it and everything, and you can look at it. It's like, usually they talk about how wide and stuff. So to me, it's either a younger one or maybe a female print, because it was narrow. It wasn't like really wide. Usually it's whatever the length is, half of that is the width, is I guess what they usually use for formulation, or, that's what it usually is. But in this case, it wasn't.
I know I asked you a year ago what you think Sasquatch is. Has your opinion changed over this last year?
No. I have really no idea. I just know from what I've seen, and like I said, this is just the eyes. Like I said, with the eye shine, the size, and just it's almost like it was mechanical when I saw the two, and it was kind of eerie to be honest. Before I would have said definitely some type of human, maybe animal mix or whatever, after the two sightings. But the stuff that's been going on now, and the fact that they can really come in, they come in loud or they can come in undetected. Like I said, it's really weird.
When you say mechanical, were you just talking about the way it moved, or kind of the way it moved its eyes?
Yeah, it's almost like it was slow, methodical, almost mechanical looking, the movements of the head. Other heads. It was weird, very weird. And like I said, the one turning, and as it turns, the eye blinks from red back to the white again. It was wild. I've never seen anything like it, and it shook me up. My buddy was on an investigation. I couldn't get a hold of him when they got off the investigation, because I watched the tail end of it, and I just kept his partner. I just kept hammering him, with text messages, and finally, he got back to me, and, I talked to him for 2 hours after that. When you're that close, 40 feet away, it's not that far, especially with something that it's still, unknown, so.
Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you about. With eye shine, take a deer, for example. When you're looking at it head on, it might be kind of a goldish color. When they turn their head, you might kind of get an orange, more of an orange color, but it's still in the same color spectrum. To go from like white to red to blink red and then back to white is very weird. And I've heard that before, and I've thought the exact same thing before. Like, you're going from a color spectrum of white to red, and if it's eye shine, it's weird that it went to red without really changing your light out. what you saw, was it just white eyes and then it blinked red and then blinked back to white?
Yeah. It stayed red for like a 2-second count, then back to the white as it's turning its head looking at the other one. You can't unsee it. It's just the craziest looking thing. I mean, it sounds crazy what I'm saying, but that's what happened. You know, it was just wild.
Yeah, like I said, I've heard it from eyewitnesses before, and I thought it was strange then. I think it's strange now, but I've heard it many times. So be careful while you're out there, will you? It's so weird the lights are showing up. I figured the last time after you and I spoke, the minute you started working on that home, activity would pick up. And keep documenting it and keep me up to date, will you? And I really appreciate you coming back on.
Not a problem. I will get that stuff over to you, and we'll go from there. I do appreciate you having me again as your guest.
Thanks again, Marty. And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Until next time.